My name is Mayra. I am 26 years old. I live in a small apartment in a quiet part of the city. Every morning I wake up early, make a cup of tea, and sit by the window before I start my day. My life looks peaceful from the outside, but inside my heart there is an empty place. That empty place belongs to someone I lost many years ago. I still think about that person almost every day. I have an older brother. His name is Aryan. He is 30 years old. When we were children, he was my best friend. He always looked after me and made me feel safe. If I was scared at night, he stayed with me until I fell asleep. If I had a bad day at school, he always found a way to make me smile. He was kind, strong, and full of energy. Everyone liked him, and I looked up to him more than anyone else. Back then, our family was happy. We lived in a small house with our parents. We did not have a perfect life, but we had enough. Every evening, we ate dinner together, talked about our day, laughed, and helped each other. I believed those happy days would last forever. But as Aryan got older, things slowly began to change. At first, the changes were small. He spent more time outside and less time with the family. During dinner, he hardly spoke. Sometimes he looked tired even though he had not done much all day. I noticed these changes, but I thought they were just part of growing up. As time passed, the distance between us became bigger. Aryan stopped telling me about his life. He no longer shared his dreams or his feelings. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he gave short answers or said he was busy. The brother who once talked with me for hours was slowly disappearing. He became quiet, distant, and hard to understand. I felt confused and hurt. I kept wondering if I had done something wrong. I tried to spend more time with him, but it felt like there was an invisible wall between us. The more I tried, the farther away he seemed. My parents noticed the change too, but they rarely talked about it. Sometimes I heard them whispering late at night. Their voices were quiet, but I could tell they were worried. Something was wrong, yet no one wanted to say it. Then one afternoon, something happened that changed everything. It was a bright, peaceful day. I came home from school expecting to see Aryan in his room or sitting in the living room. Instead, the house was unusually quiet. At first, I thought he had gone out, as he often did. Then I saw that his bedroom door was open. I walked to the room and looked inside. My heart started beating faster. His clothes were gone. His bag was missing. The small things he always kept on his desk had disappeared. I quickly ran to my mom. "Where is Aryan?" I asked. She looked at me with tired eyes. Her face was pale. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Finally, she spoke in a soft voice. "He left." I stared at her in shock. "What do you mean he left?" I asked. She looked away and stayed silent. Nothing felt real. I kept telling myself there had to be a simple reason. Maybe he just needed some time alone. Maybe he would come back before nightfall and tell us everything was fine. But deep inside, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. But deep inside, I felt that something was wrong. That night, Aryan's chair at the dinner table was empty. The house felt cold and quiet. For the first time, I understood that my brother was really gone. No one knew if he would ever come back. That night, I could not sleep. I kept looking at the empty bed across from mine, hoping to hear Aryan's footsteps coming down the hallway. I told myself he only needed a little time. Maybe he would come back the next morning and explain everything. But morning came and nothing changed. The house was still silent. Everything felt like a bad dream. I went to school, but I could not pay attention. My classmates laughed and talked as usual, but my mind was somewhere else. Every time I heard a sound, I looked up, hoping it was Aryan. It never was. The days passed slowly. Whenever I asked my parents about him, they gave me the same short answers. He needed to leave. He'll be okay. Don't worry. But they did not sound calm. They sounded worried and tired. The less they told me, the more I wanted to know. Our home became quieter every day. My dad stayed out longer, and my mom spent most of her time lost in thought. I felt like everyone knew something except me. One evening, I decided to go into Aryan's room. I stopped at the door for a moment. It felt strange to walk into his room without him there, but I needed answers. The room was almost empty. Most of his things were gone. Still, a few items were left behind. There was a book on the shelf, an old jacket behind the door, and a small box on his desk. I slowly opened the box. Inside were a few old photographs, a broken watch, and some folded papers. I picked up one paper and carefully opened it. It was written in Aryan's handwriting. My heart started beating faster as I read the first words. "I'm sorry, I can't stay here anymore." I froze, then I kept reading. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I feel like I don't belong here anymore." I read those words again and again. How could Aryan feel that way? This was his home. We were his family. At least that was what I had always believed. That night, I sat on his bed with the note in my hands. For the first time, I started thinking differently. I remembered how quiet Aryan had become. I remembered how he stopped talking to us, avoided looking at us, and always seemed lost even when he was at home. Maybe he had been hurting for a long time. Maybe none of us noticed. That thought broke my heart. The next day, I showed the note to my mom. The moment she saw it, her face changed. She looked at the paper, then at me, and quietly looked away. "You shouldn't have looked through his things," she said softly. "I just want to understand," I replied. "Why did he feel like this? Why didn't he tell us?" She did not answer. Instead, she walked to the window and stood there without saying a word. I could see her shoulders shaking. She was trying not to cry. At that moment, I knew she was hiding something. "You're not telling me everything," I said gently. She closed her eyes for a few seconds. Then she whispered, "Some things are too painful to talk about." Those words stayed in my mind. If the truth was too painful to speak about, then something terrible must have happened. From that day on, I could not stop thinking about it. Aryan did not leave for no reason. Something had changed him. Something had made him walk away from us. The happy life I remembered no longer felt real. Every memory now came with questions. Little by little, the truth started to appear. Not all at once, but in small pieces, in silence, in fear, and in the things no one wanted to say. Deep inside, I knew there was a bigger story. Aryan's real story had not been told yet, and I was the only one who still wanted to find the truth. Days turned into weeks, but nothing changed. The silence inside our home only grew heavier. It was no longer just because Aryan was gone. It was because I felt that everyone was hiding something from me. I could not ignore it anymore. One evening, I found my mom sitting alone in the kitchen. The room was quiet and only a small light was on. She looked lost in her thoughts. This time I decided to ask her again. "Mom," I said softly, "please tell me the truth." She looked at me with surprise. For a moment I saw fear in her eyes. "I already told you," she said quietly. "Aryan just needed to leave." I shook my head. "No, that's not the real reason." I walked closer and placed Aryan's note on the table. "He wrote that he didn't belong here," I said. "Why would he feel that way in his own home?" My mom stared at the note. Her hands began to shake. "I know something happened," I said gently. "Please tell me." For a long moment she stayed silent, then tears filled her eyes. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. My heart sank. "Now what?" I asked. She took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to speak. "It's about Aryan," she said. Then she covered her face with her hands. I had never seen my mom cry like this before. After a few moments, she finally spoke. "Your dad and Aryan had a terrible fight." I froze. "A fight?" I asked. She nodded. "It wasn't a normal argument," she said. "It was much worse." "What happened?" I asked. She looked down before answering. "Your dad had big plans for Aryan. He wanted him to get a safe job and live a stable life. but Aryan wanted something different. I listened carefully. He wanted to leave the city and follow his own dream, she continued. But your dad believed it was a mistake. He thought Aryan was making the wrong choice. They argued again and again. Every day, the tension in our home grew stronger. Then one night, everything changed. My mom's voice became very quiet. Your dad said something he should never have said. My heart started beating faster. What did he say? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. He told Aryan that if he didn't follow his rules, then he was no longer part of this family. Those words felt like a heavy weight on my heart. No longer part of the family. I could hardly believe it. And what did Aryan do? I asked quietly. He left that same night. My mom said he didn't even say goodbye. Suddenly, everything made sense. His silence, his sadness, the lonely look in his eyes. He didn't leave because he wanted to. He left because he felt rejected. Why didn't you stop him? I asked, my voice shaking. My mom wiped away her tears. I tried, she said, but everything happened so fast. Your dad was too angry to listen. I didn't know what to feel. I was sad, I was shocked, I was angry. What happened after that? I asked. She lowered her head. We never heard from Aryan again. Those words hurt more than anything else. For years, I believed my brother had chosen to leave us. Now I knew the truth. He left because he felt unwanted. I sat down slowly, trying to understand everything. All my life, I thought I knew my family. Now I realized I only knew part of the story. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, my mom said. I was afraid. I didn't want you to hate your dad. I didn't want our family to break even more. I looked at her for the first time. I saw not only my mom, but a woman who'd been carrying pain for many years. The room became silent again. Then I said something I had never said before. I'm going to find Aryan. She looked at me in surprise. I don't know where he is, she said. I'll find him, I replied. I have to try. At that moment, I understood something important. My brother had not simply disappeared. He was lost, and maybe he was still waiting for someone to find him. That night, I sat alone in my room, thinking about everything my mom had told me. The truth was painful, but now everything made more sense. For many years, I believed Aryan left because he no longer cared about us. Now I knew the real reason. He left because he was deeply hurt. At first, I felt angry. Angry at my dad for the cruel words he had spoken. Angry at my mom for keeping the truth from me. But little by little, my anger began to fade. I started to understand Aryan better. I remembered how quiet he had become, how distant he seemed, how tired his eyes always looked. Maybe he'd been suffering for a long time. Maybe he only wanted someone to understand him. The next morning, I made my decision. I was going to find Aryan. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing: I had to try. I started by looking through Aryan's old things one more time. This time, I looked very carefully. Inside the small box, I found something I'd missed before. It was a small piece of paper with a name and an address written on it. Maybe it was a place Aryan once wanted to visit. It wasn't much, but it was my first clue. A few days later, I traveled to another city. Everything around me was new and unfamiliar. My heart was filled with both hope and fear. I didn't know if I would find Aryan. I didn't even know if he wanted to see me. For a moment, I thought about going back, but then I remembered the words he had written. I don't belong here anymore. I couldn't let those words be the end of his story, so I kept searching. I walked through the streets showing people Aryan's old photo and asking if they had seen him. Some people said no. Others tried to help. Hours passed and I slowly began to lose hope. Then something unexpected happened. A small shop owner looked at Aryan's picture for a few seconds and then he said, "I think I've seen this man." My heart started beating faster. He pointed toward a workshop at the end of the street. "A quiet man works there," he said. "He looks just like this." I thanked him and ran as fast as I could. When I reached the workshop, I stopped outside the door. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath and walked inside. There he was. He looked older. He was quieter than before, but it was Aryan, my brother. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. It felt like time had stopped. "Mayra," he said quietly, unable to believe his eyes. Tears filled my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. We stood there in silence. Many years had passed since we had seen each other. There were so many things we wanted to say. "I thought I had lost you," I said softly. He looked down. "I thought I didn't belong anymore," he replied. Those words still hurt, but now I understood them. I took a step closer. "You were never alone," I said. "We just didn't understand what you were going through." He looked at me again, his eyes filled with tears. Slowly we began to talk, not about everything, not all at once, but enough to begin again. Aryan told me about his life after leaving home. He spoke about the hard times he faced and how he worked to build a new life by himself. It wasn't easy, but he never gave up. Then I told him about home. I told him about Mom. I told him how quiet the house had been after he left. A few days later, I asked him an important question. "Will you come home?" He stayed silent for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "I don't know." And I accepted his answer. This time I wasn't trying to force him. I only wanted him to know that he was loved. Before I left, we stood together one more time, just like we did when we were children. The distance between us was still there, but now it was filled with honesty, understanding, and hope. When I returned home, I told my mom everything. She cried, but these tears were different. They were not only tears of sadness, they were also tears of relief. Little by little, our family began to heal. We were not a perfect family, but we were finally being honest with each other, and that was enough. Now every morning, I sit by my window with a cup of tea. My life is different now. The empty place in my heart is still there, but it is no longer filled with questions. It is filled with understanding. I learned that sometimes people do not leave because they want to. Sometimes they leave because they feel they have nowhere to belong. And sometimes all they need is for someone to come looking for them. That is the lesson I will never forget. Never ignore someone's silence. Never ignore someone's pain. And never wait too long to understand the people you love. Because one day they may be gone and you may never get another chance to bring them back. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this emotional English story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.